6 years ago, the Honda Corporation decided to create a whole new sport. It took the three-wheel motorcycle known as an all-terrain vehicle, or ATV, which had been around since 1970 as a farm and utility vehicle, and spent tens of millions of dollars to market it as a plaything the whole family could use out in the woods, on dirt roads, and in the desert, away from the hustle and bustle of street traffic. In just 5 years, the four leading motorcycle manufacturers, all Japanese, sold 2.5 million of them in this country alone. The trouble is that during an ATV's average lifespan of 7 years, the ATV will carry
7 years! What's up, YouTube? I'm Jerry, and this is Jerry Jr.'s Garage. It's my lucky day.
No, man, this has got to be an 86. It's got the round slide carburetor, but there's a gray, this used to have a gray motor. No, it's got to be. And it's got Otsu tires or whatever they're called.
In this video, we're going to be talking about the difference between the 85 and 86. 250R three-wheeler, we have a 1985 sitting here. I've had this about 10 years. I even drove with this car from California all the way to the East Coast with it on the back of my BMW 10 years ago. I had this BMW track car that it was wrecked and fixed it up, and I put this thing on top of that BMW. At the time, that BMW was like in mint condition, but I put this thing on there, which these things were going for like $1,000 back then, but it was something that meant something to me. And as these things gain and lose popularity over the years, I just thought that the 85 and 86 differences video would be kind of cool. So stay tuned, talk about a little bit of the history on like the generations of 250Rs, as well as mainly go over the differences.
Oh, hell no, Joe, this is definitely a 1985. You see the seat? It's got the 250R, and my dad's brother's uncle's cousin was related to Mickey Dunlop, and he told me that all 1985s had this seat, so it's got to be a 1985.
But Billy, I found this on eBay, and it said that it was a 1986, and the guy said he found it in a barn, and still even has the original. You see, it's got the original, this cover on the front sprocket here. You never see that. It's got to be original. Plus, these plastics, you can just tell they're original. Just look at them.
Oh, I don't think so, Joe. This thing is definitely a 1985, man. I read on the Vintage Honda website, on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, there's this guy on there, and he knows everything about 250Rs, and he told me this is definitely an 85. Look at the tires, look at the motor, and look at the upper forks on the triple tree. I told you, it's definitely an 85.
Now, keep in mind, these aren't top-of-the-line clean examples. These are just two clean examples that were affordable at the time. So, these are going to be all over in prices. We're not going to be talking about prices in this video. We're just going to be talking about the difference between the 85 and the 86 ATC 250R. Now, before we get started, I'm sorry, but there are some basic things that I want you to know, and we're going to be going over the first generation of ATC 250R. Now, it's important to remember there are 3 generations of 250R. However, they made them from 1981 to 1986, starting with the 1981, which is what we have here. This is a 1981 ATC 250R. It's an air-cooled 250R. 81 and 82 are very similar. First generation. Now, what I call the second generation would be the 1983 and 84. However, I do not have one here to show you, so we're still sitting next to the 81, because the 83 and 84, like the 81 and 82, is an air-cooled 2-stroke 250cc. 1985 and 86 is when Honda stopped around and they gave the public what they wanted. The liquid-cooled three-wheelers is really what started and ended an era that is really unforgettable by many three-wheeler enthusiasts, and it's always fun to talk to someone about how it was back in the day. Which brings us to the last generation of Honda ATC 250R, the 1985. Now, the 85 and 86 were very similar. In 1985, by that time, Honda, Yamaha, and Kawasaki all had liquid-cooled models available. However, because of reliability, overall performance, and really looks and styling alone, Honda simply right out of the box, these things were usually the prime choice amongst many racers and three-wheeler enthusiasts. In 1985, you could also get short track kits, which would come with a different tank, side plastics, and I believe something up in the handlebars. You could actually make them so they turn even sharper for flat trackers. They call them flat trackers. They go around corners really, really fast, and like modern day drift cars, they go around corners and drift, and it's just insane the amount of speed that they had in these corners. I heard 70 to 90 miles an hour they could be going in a corner on a three-wheeler, which sounds a little dangerous, but fun at the same time. 7 years. While I may not be that funny, luckily a lot of these are still around and still being built to this day, and I may be guilty of parting out a few three-wheelers on eBay. I have never parted out a 250R, I will say that. So let's get to the point. I'm going to walk you around, show you the differences. This is a 1985 that we're looking at, so everything on this thing should be reminiscent of a 1985 ATC 250R, and I'll explain the differences on what you should be seeing on a 1986. Number 1, the graphics. In 1985, you should see the Honda logo just like this, about midway up through the fairing. Number 2, in 1985, the ATC 250R had a polished triple tree. As you will see here, this was a machine polish, and on 1986, you should be seeing a black upper triple tree. Now, whether they did that for manufacturing reasons, I don't know. I'm sure it was a lot cheaper just to paint it, have it powder coated black. The third thing we're going to talk about is the seat. Now, in 1985, the seat was a lot lower, I'd say about an inch or so lower, and it also said 250R on the side as well as Honda on the back. In 1986, you should be seeing a little thicker of a seat with a ATC logo on the side. The toolbox. The 1985 toolbox had a longer opening. It should be somewhere right around here. However, this doesn't have one because back in the day that was usually the first thing to come off, and the reason why I left this one off is because that's what a lot of people did. I do have the toolbox, but it is not mounted. In 1986, they changed it up a little bit with a flat little lid door thing, and that was a little bit different. But a little pro tip for you: the toolboxes are the same on some, depending on what year you're talking. They're the same on some of the smaller ATVs and things like that, and some parts will interchange. The next thing we're going to talk about is the engine color. This is black, which goes with the 1985. Now, in 1986, they were more of a gray, and I believe the front caliper also should match this color of the engine. So, the engine's gray, the front caliper should be gray. The next thing we're going to talk about are the tires. In 1985, they had used Dunlops all the way around. This is a softer rubber compound, so a lot of times these are going to be dry rotted, as you'd expect for something of this age. And the anodized gold wheels also do fade with sunlight very easily. In 1986, they had Otsu tires, which are just a little, I think they have a little tiny bit of a difference in tread pattern, and they are a harder rubber compound. The next thing we'll talk about is the front headlight. The 1985 has a smaller headlight, but a wider plastic headlight shroud. Now, since we're on this subject, this also brings me into the next thing. The 86 is a larger headlight, probably a different bulb, and it's much wider. But also, as I said, bringing us into the next difference, the 86 has raised letter warning labels on the top of the headlight. That's what you should be seeing, is because the lawsuit that they got involved in, a lot of times the warning labels would fly off, or they would have covers on them and whatnot. So that made Honda really put the warning labels and the molding of the plastic on the headlight as well as on the rear plastics. You should be seeing a warning label back here. If these were 86 plastics, there should be like a warning placard right here, as well as a warning. The There's also tire pressure molded warning labels on the left-hand side of the fenders as well. So 1985, another thing about the 1985 plastics is they were very thin, so oftentimes you would see people stitch them up and do things like this back in the day because these were very prone to breaking. The 85 and 86 replacement fenders also had a black tire pressure sticker on this left-hand side here. So if you know you have 85 plastics when there's no warning labels molded into the actual plastic, and of course you have the proper Honda labels on the backside of the plastic. The next thing we're going to talk about is the carburetor. You will see here the Keen round slide carburetor on a 1985, whereas in 1986 they had moved to the flat slide carburetor setup. The next thing we'll talk about is the 1985 rear brake setup. In 1985 you should see the linkage to the swing arm, and in 1986 they have a circlip rather than the linkage to the swing arm. The next thing we'll talk about is the front brake rotor. Now on 1985 it should be silver. In 1986 you'll see that it should be black. The next thing we'll talk about is the 1985 gas cap. Now in 1985 you will see that it has a flat surface on top, whereas the 1986 has a little it's a raised top going into your vent tube there. I'll take this off. Now the last and final thing I'll talk about here as far as differences go is the rear taillight bracket. The way that the 1985 mounts is completely different in comparison to the 1986, which is kind of hard to see here. Another thing is the rear grab bar. You're going to see here that this is silver. Most of the time these are black. Somebody must had polished this along, over the years at some point in time. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to touch on is the transmission. Now, regardless of what people say, this is definitely a 6-speed transmission, just like the 1986. Whether the gear ratio is different, I can't verify you that for sure because I haven't seen it with my own eyes, so I'm not going to put it in this video. But I will also hit on the rear carrier linkage that also was revised between 1985 and 1986. So when you hear someone say 85 is the same as 86, I mean, when I hear people say it, I think there's quite a few differences. And regardless of looks, they do look very similar, but they're going to have a lot of differences. Some of the things that I look for when someone says they have a 250R that's hardly been ridden, it's really, these are a few of the things. Just the differences are just, it's a start there. I hope this helps you guys out if you're getting into collecting these or riding these, or maybe you're gonna buy one of these, because a lot of people, even that own them and ride them, I've noticed even just on ads on eBay or Craigslist or whatever, a lot of times they don't even know what they have, or really like truly whether it's something that should be on that specific bike. I mean, these things have, let's face it, they were only supposed to last 7 years. By the way, there's 2 videos, 60 minutes in 2020, hilarious videos back in the 80s of these things and why they don't exist anymore, which I will put in the links in the description below if you want some more ATC 250R entertainment. Please click on those links because they're hilarious. Now, in 1985 and 1986 and earlier, there was a Honda line accessory book. Here we have the 1985 accessory book. So let's see what we could add in 1985, because I'm assuming it's the same for 1986. However, I don't have the 1986 accessory book here. So if I flip the page over and open to the 1985 250R, you will see below all of the accessories that you could get here. And it's kind of hard to see, but we got different headlight guards, the front over fender body covers, rubber, looks like foot pegs, a low pressure tire gauge that can fit in your pocket, speedometer and trip meter, some Pro Wedge tires, looks like maybe for the sand. And what I thought was interesting here, the tire pressure gauge, underneath this it says it allows the tire allows the rider to easily carry it with him. Why not her? Seems a little sexist, in my opinion, and maybe women weren't buying 250Rs, but there are plenty of women throughout this Honda line accessory catalog, and I guess in 1985, if this is what you were interested in, the dealership would try to sell you more and more and more items, all the way up to, looks like a belt and some belt buckles. Pretty cool, actually. If I flip the page a few more times, here you will see the entire 1985 lineup. The only thing that I actually don't see here, come to think of it, is the 350X, and I'm not really sure why it's not listed here, but as you will see, this is the entire lineup for all of their, what they would consider ATVs, ATCs in 1985, with the exception of the 350X, and I'm not really sure, maybe this came out too early? But that is quite interesting that the 350X is not listed here. Thanks for watching Jerry Jr.'s Garage. Hey, like and subscribe. Let me know what you think of the video, and give it a big thumbs up if you want to see more of something like this. Thanks for watching. OEM sticker. Jerry pressure wash it off sticker. No longer OEM. Oh well.